Where do you want to be? What do you want to do? Day 3?
Day 3?
Day 3 of this colossal thing we're doing where we discuss a game every day for most of May. Today we're reminding you a game exists and starts with the letter C. For
Cube World.
I'm gonna be honest here, upon a return trip to Cube World, I was rather unimpressed with the content I returned to find. This is definitely due to the time I have spent away from Cube World's community as a whole. I'll see the developer, who is superhuman for taking on this game's development solo, holy shit, post sometimes, but beyond that, I haven't touched this game since it came out in 2019, after 6 years of the alpha. Fun as it was to return to, I needed a lot of help being reacquainted with the gameplay, the combat, controls, the map, and Cube World itself. Andy is way more involved than I ever will be and has a lot more to say. So I'm gonna let him speak for a while. I'll probably chime in here and there and I'll do the outro, but I don't have much more to say than this. Andy, the floor is yours.
Gee, thanks. Real BRO bro move, that is. Whatever. Here we go. I bought the Cube World Alpha version in that tight window back in July 2013. That also means I was invited into the closed beta for the game's official Steam release in September 2019. So basically, that means I'm cooler than you. Back when all we had was the alpha version and the occasional blog posts, I remember being so entranced by Cube World. I would read the official site detailing the game's roadmap, grind for equipment using different world seeds, and try to memorize the pet food combinations. It really did feel like an RPG with just enough to work while not having too many rules or obligations to weigh you down. This game was actually how I discovered SoundCloud. That's right, this game was my first check out my SoundCloud. I'd go to the account, cue the music, and then play Cube World for a while, since the alpha didn't have music included. Imagine my surprise when this music played in the final game. Speaking of the final release, I can still so clearly remember when the developer Wale suddenly tweeted out that Cube World was going to be released. How quickly that message got picked up and shared around, how people were replaying that trailer and dissecting it for details, how surreal it was to see an official Steam page for the legendary Cube World. It felt like anything was possible. Shame the next year was 2020, huh? Anyway, Cube World was the first open-world game I remember playing. Similar to other gigantic open-ended games that feature randomly generated exploration at the time, it didn't feature much in the way of explanations or tutorials, and so it was pretty difficult to get into without a fan wiki or outside assistance. But during that time, it was just so mysterious. I remember walking up to the passive animals in the game and just holding out every item in my inventory, wondering if they did anything, and suddenly that animal would become my pet. Then I would forget which item I was holding, so I didn't even learn anything. But Cube World is also a difficult game when you're first starting out. Enemies can kill you swiftly, and it's easy to accidentally run out of healing items. Everything from money to your first level up has to be earned. But after you make it past that initial level 1 hump, Cube World can be a relaxing game. You can fall into this loop of infinite exploration and infinite growth, constantly discovering new ways to become stronger. You start out destroying cotton plants and end up making your weapon a giant toothpick. Your overall goal is to become more efficient and effective so that you can continue adventuring more comfortably. That adventure takes place in an impossibly huge world made up of voxels and loads of biomes. Dotted throughout are various structures, resources to gather, and enemies to challenge. Something I always appreciated is how the creatures that wander around aren't always hostile. They can either be the passive animals, like I mentioned before, or parties of adventurers, just like you. It's often a coin flip as to whether these guys are friendly or not, and that brief moment of tension is exactly like meeting a stranger. If they're helpful, you can have them fight against nearby enemies and mooch off of their work. And that can help make the early game pass by a little more quickly. When you start the game up, you choose your character class of the 4 available, but after that you can choose one of the specialty branches to decide how you'd like to expand your character's abilities. And even beyond that, every class has multiple weapon types that change the basics of how that character fights. My favorite build has always been a longsword rogue assassin, since you get an ability where you can dash forward super quickly, piercing through one enemy and into the next. It's like you're carving your way to the front of an autograph signing. All of that is an excellent way to build a party, especially considering Cube World is multiplayer. It's relatively simple to host your own world and get people to connect to your game. Back when the alpha was more popular, people would put together gigantic servers filled with over 100 players. You could hop in and hop out whenever, party up with total strangers, and grind levels super easily. But even without that many people, it's fun enough to just have a couple players together to tag team some rock monsters. The alpha version was also the first game I modded. There's this program called CWME, or Cube World Model Editor, that could dump and overwrite all of the voxel models in Cube World. The changes would be entirely client-side, so only you would see them, and you could overwrite any model. You could even see models that weren't supposed to be in the game yet. So of course, I just made every longsword into master swords, and after that I expanded into stuff like the Bigoron sword, the Locomo and Phantom swords, changed the money into rupees, made the mushrooms into super mushrooms. I went a bit crazy. In particular, I remember being pretty proud of myself for the turtle. The turtle pet is one you can ride, but it attacks by rapidly spinning around for a while. So I thought, I gotta make that into the spinner from Twilight Princess. And so I did. Now I get 1,000 times more use out of the spinner than Link ever did. Now that some time has passed since the official release on Steam, and we've had the announcement of Cube World Omega, I find myself experiencing a similar excitement to what I had back during the alpha version. Every so often, the bug will bite me again, leaving an itch that needs to be scratched. I'll need to look over the screenshots again, rewatch trailers, reread blog posts. I'll play both versions of Cube World and wistfully look around, wondering what'll be next. In the age of the internet and indie games, I follow a lot of game developers and the progress of lots of projects, but I don't think I've ever been as emotionally invested in a game's development as I have been in Cube Worlds. It's taught me that just because something is old doesn't mean it's inferior, and just because something has changed doesn't mean it's decayed.
Okay, there has to be a way to bring those models into the full release game, or even Omega, because I want that Bigoron sword. Now then. What game starting with a C do you hold near and dear to your heart? Let us know in the comments and we'll see you tomorrow for
D.
For don't.